Hi everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. This is going to be fun. I get asked to do mic comparisons all the time, and frankly, I don't have the time to do it. But then Audient contacted us and asked us, can you list all the mics you have and then come up with like 10 mics and do a comparison? So for us, we've got a U47 that we use all the time, which is going to be our quote-unquote control mic. It's a $30,000 microphone. So a U47 is possibly the most copied mic of all time, so it made sense to use that as a control. It's a mic that I've personally used on lots of huge albums and has been sung into by lots of great singers, so we know it delivers. We're using the ID44, and what is interesting when you go between small diaphragm condensers, large diaphragm condensers, expensive mics, cheap mics, dynamic microphones, or ribbon microphones, is they all have massively, wildly different outputs. And I was actually quite surprised. I found the U47, I actually wanted to pad it. It had quite a lot of output. So it helps to have a mic pre like this, which has enough gain, because the AEA is a wonderful sounding ribbon, but it was right at the verge. I turned the pad off. I had to put it up to about 80% up on the mic pre to get it. But that's the reality when it comes to using ribbon mics. Now, there are things like cloud lifters. They're these units that give a bit more oomph, but I also feel like they color the sound. So it would be completely useless for you, because then we're adding a device in there which is different to the mic pre's in here and will give you a completely untrue result. So we just kept it all the same, all uniform. Now, the way we did it is we got good level with Mikhail on the U47, and then Eric took a 1K test tone, and after we had got the level on the vocal, we measured how loud a 1K test tone was printing into that mic pre. Now that might sound a little confusing, but what it meant is every time we stuck up a new microphone, we set the gain on the microphone to read evenly at 1K. There's really no way to get it to be absolutely 100% even, but I thought if we go right in the middle there, the differences will be the frequency response, meaning typically cheaper microphones have what some might say is a more brittle high end, and sometimes a little bit more aggressive in the high end, the high mids and the high end. So you're going to find when you listen to some of these mics that they might seem, when she's singing softly, all fairly even relatively, but then when she goes into higher parts, when she moves up her register, some might start to peak quite excessively. But we can't really control a mic level based on one part of a song. We've got to take the average. And so 1K right slap bang in the middle of the frequency spectrum makes absolute perfect sense. And again, with these kinds of things, science is really hard to do, because the perfect thing, of course, would be to have all the capsules in exactly the same place and only have one performance, because she's going to vary from performance to performance. I do still believe we learned a lot from this process. And to be honest, it reinforced what you're probably going to think yourself, or might be new information to you. But I don't think there's any really startlingly different results. I think there's a couple of the cheaper mics that are like, oh wow, those are pretty good. And also mics that worked really well for the song. Get the multi-tracks, download them, put them into your own DAW and follow along and see what you feel. This is a song that she wrote called Weekend Lover. She has a really, really unique voice and perfect for a mic demo, because with that amount of character and such a huge range between high and low stuff, a great falsetto, she's going to push the microphone in many different ways. So it's Mikhail Seeley. Check her out. All right, so here we are. Here is the U47. So I've got that up with the acoustic. The acoustic was recorded with a Neumann KM56, which, for those of you who know what that is, that's a very famous old small diaphragm condenser that was probably most famously used on pretty much every Beatles recording. In fact, these two mics, although, of course, the Beatles used the U48 because they had a figure of 8 pattern and they sang on both sides. However, this is essentially the same mic, the Frank Sinatra mic, if you like. All right, so U47 and acoustic guitar.
Can you hold my heart while it's in pieces? Can you meet me where you are without leaving?
I mean, it gets a little gritty in there, but in a pretty way. It doesn't just kind of only become gritty and aggressive. It's quite sweet to listen to. You know, all of us are fans of U47s, and it's nice because we're using the Audient Pre, which is pretty colorless, so it is the sound of the mic. Now, I want to go to the AEA R44 next, And the reason I want to go to that is because the AEA microphones are, to a certain extent, still built from NOS, new old stock of RCA mics. And if they're not, they're built from incredibly close machined versions. So this is about as close as you're going to get to a vintage RCA. Again, it's not a cheap mic. It's $4,000 retail. However, listen to these on your own and make up your own mind before listening to my opinion, because I don't want to influence. But this is something that makes perfect sense to me. Here's the R44.
We were nothing but weekend lovers. We can love her, we can love ourselves. Yeah, it's like we couldn't meet.
There's a little wispy 7K in there, but generally speaking, it's quite, I wouldn't say dull's a horrible word, but it's just a bit darker. Let's go to the more aggressive section.
Can you hold my heart while it's in pieces?
Even with the pop screen on, you still hear the pa. You know, frankly, I don't find that a problem. I'll just put some EQ on it, just a high pass. But essentially, what I like about this mic is it's a little darker, which actually suits the song. Not necessarily good for a bright, modern pop EDM track. It's not going to be good for that. But it seems quite even, meaning if I just, for the heck of it, grab any generic EQ, go to like 7, 6, 7K, and just boost a little bit.
Can you hold my heart while it's in peace?
We can do a high pass on that low stuff there at about 100.
Can I love myself for loving you?
That sounds great. So that is like a couple of dB, about 7K, nice gentle lift, and 100 hertz roll off for the P. So it's interesting. The thing about that microphone and that particular ribbon is it can take EQ, what a lot of people look for. With the cheaper mics, as we'll hear, they can get a little abrasive at the high end. And as soon as you apply any EQ and compression on them, they can get really quite offensive. So you end up de-essing and, you know, running multi-bands or dynamic EQs, etc. Okay, now we're going to go to the cheapest mic. This is a small diaphragm, inexpensive mic. Blanking on the price, but I think you can get a pair of them for like $200 a pair. So this, at its most expensive, is a $100 microphone. So everything we've been saying is probably going to be a little wispy and thin on the top. I'll take the EQ off, give it a listen.
We were nothing but weekend lovers. We can love her, we can love ourselves. Yeah, it's like we...
That S there was pretty bright. It was pretty nice when there wasn't any S's or T's, but here...
We can love ourselves, yeah.
I mean, that's quite aggressive. If this was your only mic and you had $100, you'd definitely be putting a de-esser on this. Let's go to the aggressive section.
Pieces. Can you meet me where I am without leaving?
So for me, there's like a that's just super aggressive. Now I've done a video using this mic and the Audient as well, where we recorded a whole song using it. And with simple EQ de-essing, it's very usable. So it really is the point that if you've only got $100 and you want a condenser and a utility mic, pretty darn close. Let's go to an SM58. We all know the SM58. It's the stage mic of choice and a lot of great singers' vocal mic. And of course, it's a dynamic microphone. So far, we've had 2 condensers and 1 ribbon.
We were nothing but weekend lovers. We can love her, we can love ourselves. Yeah, it's like we couldn't meet each.
So that S is a little bit more aggressive, but it's sort of always there. And what I like about that, rather than individual notes ripping my head off, is it means I could use a gentle de-essing across the whole track and just control it. There isn't specific frequencies that are just exploding out of nowhere. That's really difficult as a mixer with any instrument, let alone a vocal, where just certain frequencies explode and you're trying to solve 5 different problems. A 58's a pretty darn good microphone. All right, let's go to the aggressive section.
Pieces. Can you meet me where I am without leaving?
There's like a 3K kind of grit here.
Meet me where I am with...
Kind of nice though. This is a rock mic. You could put a bit of saturation on there, a bit of distortion, and exaggerate that and really know in a rock setting with a band playing heavy guitar. So the 58 is going to cut pretty well. Again, a U47 is a utilitarian mic in all instances. You could brighten it or be even. But if you want a quick, easy fix for a rock vocal, Seems like $120, whatever it is, SM58 is going to do great. All right, while we're in the Shure world, let's go to the famed SM7B, the microphone that everybody will tell you is what Michael Jackson sung Thriller on, what Bono likes a lot, and you hear this mic being talked about all the time. And I've done many, many blind shootouts, and people have put it in their top 4. We did 12 mics at Blackbird, one of the best mic collections in the world, and in everybody's top 4, the SM7. Sometimes it was number 1, but it was incredible. The 47, their pristine 47, did win, but the SM7 gave it a really big run for its money.
We were nothing but weekend lovers, weekend lover, we can love ourselves. Yeah, it's like we couldn't meet each other. We grew up to find
Go to the aggressive part of the end.
pieces. Can you meet me where I am without leaving?
I mean, it's aggressive in the high mids. It's a characteristic of all dynamic Shure microphones. I feel like it's tameable and useful. And it's interesting to think of somebody like, Michael Jackson, you'd think of as quite a pure, funky voice, in the best sense of the word, incredibly expressive singer. You wouldn't think of something as aggressive as this, but it's interesting. It's an evenness in the high mids that it actually sits in the track really, really well. Again, when you have microphones that have spikes on certain EQ things, it's really disconcerting because you'll pull it up in the track and then sometimes it's like really killing you, and other times you're like, I don't hear what he's saying. Oh, So this has got an evenness in those high mids. It's aggressive, but it sounds great. We've got the Roya R10, which is the affordable ribbon. I think it's like a $500 or $600 ribbon. It's made by Roya, which of course are a highly respected company. It's an industry standard. Pretty much any other person that records a guitar will use an R121 and a 57 combined. The R10 is actually a little brighter. At least that's my experience. Let's see where it comes.
We were nothing but weekend lovers, weekend lover, weekend love ourselves.
Although, interesting enough, it actually sounds quite dark in this instance. Let's go to the outro.
Pieces, can you leave me where I am without leaving?
It seemed to print a little lower. I remember with the R10, we were right on the edge with the gain. It needs some gain. I would say with ribbons, if you do have an opportunity, you could use a cloud lifter. You can use something that gives it a little bit more oomph. I mean, that's totally usable level, don't get me wrong. But if you did want to get a little bit more out of it, you might want to stick something in the way that just gives it a bit more gain. Not as bright as I thought. I thought it was going to be super, super bright when it went down, but it's actually quite even. But it's a lot brighter than the AEA ribbon, which is really quite dark, but pleasing. Okay, I think we only have 2 more left. We have the Mojave 201. These 2 mics are similarly priced. One I think is just below $300 and one is just above. So you would expect similar results. Again, I mean, a $300 condenser is probably the price range that most people go for condensers, at least their second mic. People will start off with a dynamic at $100 or less, like an SM57, and then they'll aspire to getting like a $300 condenser. I would say in that price range, Sweetwater and Neumann would tell you that's where they sell most of their sort of entry-level condensers.
We were nothing but weekend lovers, weekend lover, weekend love ourselves.
I gotta be honest, I like that. It's a little, I can hear a little tiny high end going there, but I also like that whispery kind of around it. It's nice. Let's go to the aggressive part of the end.
Pieces, can you meet me where I am without leaving?
This mic on my voice is really good because it does have a little extra bite in the high mids than other mics in that price range. That's still pleasing. And when I sing, I have a particularly uninteresting voice. I don't have any grit, I just sound like an English choir boy, to be quite frank. And so I really enjoyed using the Lauten. Not overly aggressive, not out of control in those high mids and that high end. So for $300, highly recommended. All right, Mojave, the 201 FET.
We were nothing but weekend lovers, weekend lover, weekend love ourselves. Yeah, it's like we...
Really nice. That S got a little bit out of control. That's the only thing. Maybe a little bit de-essing there.
We can love ourselves, yeah.
That's it's kind of a whistly frequency that would jump out of the track. So it definitely needs some de-essing.
It's in pieces. Can you meet me where I am without leaving?
But again, a $300 mic with some de-essing and you're going to get amazing results. So it's quite interesting. We went from $100 to $30,000 and all of them would work. They would just need different kinds of treatment. If I was to choose, obviously I'm going to go for the expensive mic because without knowing the price tag, it's the most even sounding. But I'm pleasantly surprised by both the Mojave and the Lewitt at $100 and of course the Lauten. And the Royer R10 didn't really sound like what you would attribute a ribbon mic to sound. It's brighter than any kind of ribbon at that kind of price range. It's got a lot to do with this grill here, which has like it adds like a little extra brightness to it. It's a trick that ribbon mics have done for years, which is to use a kind of aggressive grill on it. All wonderful mics. I mean, to be honest, there was nothing there that isn't uncontrollable, but different mics have maybe more random high frequencies that pop out, meaning if that's all you can afford and that's what you get, you're just going to have to tame them. The OX Sound Soothe 2, of course, is an incredibly popular plugin to solve that, but I think it's nearly $200, so it's not exactly a cheap version. You know, you spend $300 on your mic and then you've got to spend $200 on a plugin to contain it. But it does mean that free de-essers that come with your DAW, just get in there and find those frequencies and take them out. If all you've got is $100 to $300 for a condenser, it's really just evening out the high mids and the high end. And I suppose if that's all the problem is, not a bad problem to have, the $300 versus $30,000.